Hey beautiful people, and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be giving you 15 more differences between Australia and South Africa. I did the first part of this recently, maybe like 2 weeks ago, and people seemed to really enjoy that, and they sent me a lot of messages about it, which was nice. So I thought I would just add the second 15 things to that list. If you haven't already, please do go and subscribe on the little button below. It would really help me out, and also click that like button so I know that you like these types of videos. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this video. The first thing on our list is language. So if you didn't know, South Africa is a very cultural country, as is Australia, but there are actually 11 official languages in South Africa. So the main spoken language is English and Afrikaans, and then there are also African languages that come in. So I'm coming on here after I had actually already posted this video. A friend of mine messaged me and just let me know that I actually got the prevalent languages wrong, or not necessarily wrong, but also the way I worded it. It may have offended some people, so I'm really sorry if you watched this video and I offended you in any way regarding the languages that I was talking about. I didn't mean to seem disrespectful or anything by kind of pushing the African languages aside, because I know it's a really big part of this country, the language and the culture and everything around those languages. So I'm going to put up on the screen a little graph of the most prevalent languages. And it's actually so interesting because English and Afrikaans don't come first. It's just those are the languages that are most widely spoken, obviously in schools and, when you're out and about. So those are the only languages I'm really familiar with, if you can say that. So it's Zulu and then Xhosa, but I'm pretty sure that's pronounced differently. I'm probably saying that really wrong. First, and then English and Afrikaans. So that's really interesting. I did actually research this a little bit further, and I got a bit of mixed signals. So some websites were saying English and Afrikaans were higher up, but it depended on whether it was talking about in the home or in school systems and work environments and stuff like that. So they are still really widely spoken. Anyways, I guess this taught me that I need to do a little bit more research before talking on certain topics. I really hope you can forgive me for that and enjoy the rest of this video. So children grow up bilingual here, whereas in Australia, I actually had to research this, but there are no official languages, although the main spoken language is English, and then there are other languages. There are Aboriginal languages, which I think I did write it down. What did I write down? No, I didn't. 250 indigenous languages in Australia. Then there is also, I think I saw Mandarin and Chinese and Japanese and a few other languages that are also quite widely spoken. But yeah, South Africa is a very bilingual country, and Australia is not really. So when you're at school, you kind of get to choose between, I'm trying to think what languages we got to learn at school, but we got to choose between learning to speak French or learning to speak Japanese. And yeah, that's all we really got. Whereas in South Africa at school, it is you have to do Afrikaans and an African language, I think. I could be mistaken on that. Don't quote me on that one. But it's really interesting because when I first came here, I honestly was so stuck because I grew up speaking English and German because my mother's German. But I didn't realize that Afrikaans was so big here. And in the town that we moved to, a lot of the older generation, they just assume that you speak Afrikaans. So when I was working and stuff, people would come up to me and be like, why do you not understand me? And I'd have to explain the whole situation. In any case, that is interesting, and that's a big difference. At least it was for me, especially culturally trying to fit in. Number two is one of the biggest things, which is the difference in animals, which I totally forgot about in the first video. So I went from having kangaroos hopping around my backyard to having monkeys literally everywhere. And yeah, there are a lot of different animals here. So of course there's the Kruger National Park where the wild animals are kept. So not kept, it's a huge natural enclosed area where the wild animals can live freely and safely, because obviously you can't have like lion and giraffe and hippos wandering around in South Africa because people will get like really injured. So they have like a gigantic enclosed space. Although if you go to the more rural areas, you do sometimes get like hippos, actually quite often hippos in dams and things like that, and you can find giraffe and buffalo and stuff like that, just not so often lion. And in Australia you have things like wombats, which people here are like, what's a wombat? Like, how did I know what a wombat is? So I have to explain it. And we get emus in Australia, and kangaroos and dingoes, which is like wild dog type of thing. What else do we have? Possums. You don't get possums in South Africa. And I'm sure there are quite a few more that I can't think of right now. But those are the main ones. Number 3 is like wearing shoes in public or not wearing shoes in public. So in Australia, like, you will often not be allowed into a shopping mall or a cinema if you're not wearing shoes. And in South Africa, it's like so normal for people not to wear shoes, like even adults. Whereas in Australia, like, it's more children who maybe don't run around with shoes on because they don't want to wear shoes, and it's more comfortable and it's probably better for you. But in South Africa, like, it's totally normal to pitch up to school and like not wear shoes. Going to the mall, there are adults that don't wear shoes, which I found really strange, and I'm still not really used to it. I don't know, I don't really like it. I just don't feel comfortable not wearing shoes in public unless it's at the beach or something like that. If I'm going swimming, I don't know. That's really weird. Probably good though. I was researching that apparently if you go to school, you know, wearing those big black thick sole heeled shoes, that was so wrong. I don't know how to say it. It's actually really bad for your learning ability and like being able to soak up information and concentration. So from that point, it's probably good, but it is a bit weird. So let's move on to number 4, is the difference between like a braai and a barbecue. So in Australia, you barbecue, and in South Africa, you braai. And you think they're the same things, but they're not actually. So you know how people always joke around with Australians like, oh, you're gonna like cook a shrimp on the barbie or whatever, which I don't think Australians really put shrimp on the barbecue. But it's mostly used for like cooking meat, like chops or sausages or veggie alternatives to that. Whereas in South Africa, you could put almost anything on a braai. So like sweet potato, garlic bread, corn, like all sorts of things go on a braai. So you can cook like almost any meal like on a braai. So that's a bit of a difference, I guess. Not really, not an important difference, but it is a difference. And then another thing is coffee. Australians are really good at making coffee, and so are South Africans, except we haven't quite here got to the point where we have like so many options on the menu. So like in Australia, I wrote down a little list of some of the things that are like really common, which is like a short black, a long black, a flat white, a latte, a piccolo latte, an espresso, a double espresso, a doppio macchiato, a baby chino. And like, you don't get all of those things on the menus in South Africa. People will just look at you like, what is that? And then you'd have to obviously explain it. Whereas in South Africa, it's more common to have like a cappuccino, a cafe latte, an Americano. And those 3 are the most common coffees like found on lists. And I'm only just like really getting into coffee now. So that's quite nice that it's growing in South Africa. But yeah, I wonder what type of coffee I'd drink if I was in Australia and had like all those different options, because I probably haven't even tried half of those things and wouldn't know if I liked them. Number 7 is the price difference in luxury, like nice to have things. So like in Australia, if you, for instance, want to get a haircut or have your hair colored or do your nails or get a massage, it's so expensive. They're like really cheap in South Africa because there's a lot, the labor here is a lot cheaper and people get paid a lot less, which of course for the people doing the jobs is not nice. So yeah, those things are way more affordable than they are in Australia. So let's go on to number 8, and that is domestic help around the house. In Australia, you do everything yourself, I think most of the times, unless you're like a really high income earner and you can afford like a cleaning service, who will come with like all of their cleaning products and come to clean your house, and they'll do things like clean the floors, clean your bathroom, do your kitchen. And in South Africa, it's the complete, like, it's so normal to have somebody in your home helping you with your domestic work. So whatever that may be, cleaning everything, doing your clothing washing, your ironing, your dishes. A lot of people even have nannies for their children when they have to go back to work, to help take care of them at home. And when I first came here, it was such a big adjustment. Like, I couldn't get used to somebody, you know, like cleaning my clothes and tidying up everywhere and just like being in my space and like touching my things all the time. And it took me a really long time to come to terms with it. And now I understand it from a different point of view, because I see that the people that are doing these jobs really need work, and they don't have another option, because a lot of these women who come to clean don't have an education and often don't speak like a really English very well, and they don't really have any other options. So the lady that works for us, she came to us and asked if we would give her a job, and we did, and she's really lovely. She comes and helps us 4 days a week to clean the house, which now I'm so grateful for. Having a child, like, it gives me so much freedom, and we are really spoiled, and we have a really good relationship with her. And I've finally kind of gotten used to having somebody in my space, although I still find it a struggle. Like, I can't just sit down and relax while she's cleaning. I'll always be doing something, like editing videos and stuff now, or I try and get out the house just to give her space here as well. That is a really big difference. In Australia, you don't have that. Like, you have to, if you're working, you'll either clean your house when you come home from work or on the weekends. When we were growing up in high school, we had like household chores. So like, take the rubbish out. My brother would typically do the vacuuming of the whole house, and I would do the mopping of the house, and my mom would do the washing. We would help her fold sometimes, or clean the pool, those types of things, which I'm sure some South African families get their children to help as well, but yeah, it's a really big thing to get used to. Another thing is the slang. So South African slang is so weird. And I've started speaking like this a little bit too, but I'll often say words and people are like, where are you from? And like some of my friends like tease me about it. So a couple of the slang differences is like, we say bathers, which is a thing like you put on to go swimming. In South Africa, they call it a costume or a costume. Yeah, I think that's pronounced right. I don't know. And in Australia, that's like a party costume, like a dress-up party costume. You would never really say costume unless you were going to like a dress-up party. So that's really odd. Another one is like, we say icy pole for like that cold sweet thing that you eat, like an ice cream, but the icy pole. And here they call it an ice lolly, which I guess makes sense, but like icy pole makes more sense because it's an icy on a pole. Another thing is like like a hoodie or something you put on in winter. We call it a jumper. I don't know why. I guess it doesn't really make that much sense. Maybe jump into it. I don't know. And here they call it like a jersey, which is weird. I've never really heard that term before. Another thing that people say here is like, if you're about to go like do something or you want to say bye to someone, you'll often say like, okay, I'll see you now, which is like, I'll see you just now, like I'll see you later. Whereas if you say I'll see you now, it's like, oh, I'll see you like in 2 minutes, like I'll see you now. And then if you say like I'll see you now, it's like I'll see you later or tomorrow or something like that. And it's really odd to get used to. Like even my family, when they come visit, they're like, what does that even mean, I'll see you now? And there are tons of those kind of slang words. Maybe I'll do a whole other video just on Australian slang versus South African slang. But yeah, it's really different, and it's quite funny to get used to that actually. Let me just turn my page. The other thing is when you greet people in South Africa, like people tend to like hug unless it's like maybe somebody you really, really don't know, you'll like handshake them. But if it's like your family, people even tend to like kiss on the lips when they see you, and it's like your family, like your mother, your father, your uncle, which is so weird. Like I never ever understood that, but it's just like the way that you greet each other here, especially as like family and stuff like that. Whereas like in Australia, you'll most likely handshake, and if it's like your family, you'll give them a hug, and that's just like a personal space thing. But South Africans are like so loving, and I mean Australians are too, but it's just like really different the way that people greet each other. Number 11 is economy and unemployment or employment. So personally, and also what I read on the internet, it seems like in Australia, you can find jobs a lot easier. So I actually researched, it says the unemployment rate of Australia is at 5.6% or like 6%. It varies depending on what like website you look at. In South Africa, the unemployment rate is like 27.6, which is huge. And I think it's like in Australia, even if you aren't qualified in something, you can still make a really good living. Like you can work as a waitress or a bartender, or I don't know, do like events coordinating or something. And there are loads of jobs, dog walking, and you can still survive. Whereas like in South Africa, you kind of need to be like really well educated to be able to get good jobs, or have like really good work experience, history, or something like that. So it's a lot harder to find jobs that like pay well here. And in South Africa, people are just paid so much less, even though I think the standard of living can be a bit cheaper, like with rent and stuff like that. It's just, yeah, it's way harder to find a job. I think personally, I feel that way. And that also leads into my 12th point, which is job creation. So in South Africa, which is fantastic because it gives people the opportunity to work and earn an income when they don't have any education, is that there are people that do like become petrol attendants. So when you go to fill up your car at the fuel station, there's somebody who does everything for you. In South Africa. So they come and they put the petrol in and they bring the card machine and you can swipe your card. In Australia, you have to do that yourself. So you literally have to go and open the petrol cap on your car, fill the thing, and then you have to go and pay. And here it's just like somebody else does it for you. And I'm sure that they don't get paid very much, but at least it's an opportunity for somebody to earn an income. And we are very spoiled to have that type of help here. Another thing is you get, the booms that open. A lot of the time the booms just don't work and you have people lifting them up. And then I'm guessing they get paid by the center or the complex or whatever it is to do that job. And also in South Africa, there are car guards. So they will like watch your car. And then you give them, I don't know, like a tip or something of 2 Rand or 5 Rand. Or if they were really lovely and it's raining, you maybe give them 10 or 20 Rand. And they also usually get paid by like the shopping complex. Whereas in Australia, you have those little ticket machines where you literally have to go and pay for your parking and put the ticket that you receive in your windscreen so that you don't get fined for illegally like parking there and not paying. Whereas in South Africa, I've honestly never seen that. We've traveled a little bit. We've been to Cape Town and we've been to Pretoria, Joburg, and a couple other places. And I've never seen that where you have to on the side of the street go put your coins in, get your parking ticket, and then you can park there. There are just human beings basically doing that job. Number 13 is the outback versus the bush. So, and like the things that you can do in the outback versus in the bush. So here we have the Kruger National Park, which I mentioned before, and you can drive in your vehicle around and look for animals. And then there are designated areas where you can either pay to camp, and it's in fence so you don't get attacked by animals, or you can stay in like a chalet or something like that. And there are also fancy tented camps, which cost loads of money, that are really, really beautiful to go to. And in Australia, when we were growing up, that's like the outback. There aren't too many wild animals really, like kangaroos and dingoes, which could probably do the most harm. So it's not the same as here where there are potential lions and hippos that could chomp you in half. And we never paid to do things like going camping. You could just like chuck everything in your ute and go to the outback and literally camp somewhere in a dried up riverbed for, I don't know, a night or 2 or 3 or longer, however long you want. You don't have to pay for it. You obviously don't have any electricity or water or anything like that. You have to bring that all in yourself. But it's different to South Africa because you have to pay for those things here, and then you get like an electricity plug, and it's at like a, I don't know, a caravan park or something like that. But I guess the outback and the bush are kind of similar in the way that they sort of look, with the grasses and the trees and things, but they are two completely different things, and the feelings that you get in both of these places are so different. But it's beautiful just to be able to explore that. Another thing that's different between Australia and South Africa is that in Australia, in some of the territories, so the different sections of Australia, you get daylight savings, and in South Africa nobody knows what that is. So basically what that means is in winter they change the time depending on the state, like an hour behind. So basically when you wake up in the morning, it's gonna feel later than it actually is. I don't know if that makes sense. So if you had have left the time the same and you wake up at 6 o'clock, it would still be dark. When you come home from work, then like it gets darker later instead of having it the same time, and then you would be coming home and it's just like darker, for instance. That's like in winter they do that. I don't know if that makes sense. And in South Africa they don't have that. Like the time just stays the same the whole year round. It wouldn't be as cold and as dark, but it would still be 6 o'clock. I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly. Anyways, South Africa does not have daylight savings. The last point that I wanted to talk about is like driving and speeding, and just like traffic and driving in general and the laws around it. And like in South Africa, people don't really stick to the speeding rules, or like the speed limits. I mean, like if it's a 60 zone, people are like, oh, well, who cares? And they'll drive like 70 or 80. And I'm like, what? When I first came here, I couldn't believe how many people were speeding and how reckless drivers are. And I don't know, just nobody sticks to the rules. Like everyone just kind of does what they want. And there's no such thing as demerit points here, like on your driver's license. In Australia, they have demerit points. So if you do something wrong, you speed, you go over a stop street, or whatever the case may be that you did wrong while driving, they will take a certain amount of demerit points off of your license. And when that is done, like when you have no points left, they take away your whole license. So you can't drive, which means that people want to stick to the rules so that their license doesn't get confiscated. And in South Africa, they don't have that. I think actually I heard that they wanted to do that a while ago, a couple of times, and and it never happened. But it's just crazy. Like people just do whatever they want. They'll drive in front of you, they'll cut in front of you, they'll speed. If you're driving 100 and you're already driving the speed limit, some people will push behind you and want you to drive faster. And then I would just get so annoyed and be like, listen, I'm driving 120, like stay behind. And now I just like stick to the left and I'm like, whatever, go overtake me, be reckless. But it's just crazy. Yeah, that's a big difference for me. It's just like the driving, and like the taxis here often drive really recklessly. You want to sometimes stay away from taxis. I mean, I'm sure some people drive really well, but majority of the taxis are known for like driving recklessly, and you just have to like be careful when you're driving around them. Whereas in Australia, like everyone kind of just like drives a little more responsibly. Yeah, and you kind of know what to expect, which is not the same when you're driving here. I think that is all 15 of my points. Yes, so that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you learned something about Australia or about South Africa. If you do like this video, please give me a thumbs up. It just lets me know that you like this kind of content, so I know what to create in the future. Also hit that subscribe button down below, this little circle. It would really help me out. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.